What if the most talked about pregnancy in recent royal history never actually happened the way we were told? What if the very woman who claimed to carry a future royal heir wore it? Sounds insane, right? But what if I told you that someone on the inside, someone who has stood just feet away from the queen, someone who's photographed generations of royals, has finally broken his silence? Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. And he's not a tabloid gossip. He's not a YouTuber with a theory. He's Arthur Edwards, the royal photographer. And what he's now willing to reveal might just confirm what millions of us have quietly suspected for years. She used a moon bump. But why now? And why him? That's the story no one expected to come out. And it didn't come from a palace whistleblower or a bodyguard. It came from the man with the camera, the one they trusted to never tell. So buckle up, because this is not the version of events the palace wants you to hear. This is the story they tried to bury. A story wrapped in silk dresses, photo ops, and royal smiles. But underneath, a scandal that could shake the monarchy to its core. Beginning, the loyal witness. Let's go back. Back before the tabloids erupted. Before the documentaries. Before the finger-pointing. There was Arthur Edwards. For over 40 years, he was there, capturing weddings, balcony waves, jubilee celebrations, baby christenings, and quiet strolls behind Kensington walls. He wasn't just a photographer. He was the photographer. The royals knew him, trusted him. He'd been granted a front-row seat to royal history. Charles called him by name. Diana smiled warmly when he raised his lens. William and Harry grew up with him just over their shoulders. And when Meghan Markle entered the royal picture, Arthur stayed professional. He did what he always did, photographed, observed, stayed quiet, because that's what you did if you wanted to keep your access. But as time went on, something shifted, and it started with a belly, a baby bump, or was it? Middle, the image of perfection. When Meghan and Harry announced their pregnancy in October 2018 during their royal tour of Australia, the world went into a frenzy. The timing was perfect. The press needed good news. The palace was under stress. And Meghan? She was glowing. Literally glowing in every photograph. Arthur was there, as always, documenting every moment. He captured Meghan in flowing gowns, cradling her stomach, walking hand in hand with Harry. The images were flawless, almost too flawless. But Arthur, unlike the rest of us, wasn't just looking at what was in the frame. He was seeing what was around it. The adjustments, the rushed staff, the intense control over which angles were allowed. He noticed something. Something small at first. In one shot, Meghan's baby bump seemed high round. The next morning, at a different event, it was oddly low, sagging. Then it was suddenly taut again. Most would dismiss it. It's just the dress, people said. Fabric bunches. Angles change. But Arthur had been photographing pregnant women for decades. Diana, Sophie, Kate. He knew the difference between fabric shifting and body mechanics. He knew how a real pregnancy looks from every angle, every lens, every flash. And something wasn't right. Still, he said nothing. Because Arthur was loyal. Why this story matters now. Fast forward to now, years later, and Arthur has finally spoken out. In a quiet, off-the-record conversation that was never meant to reach the public, he revealed details that have stunned those who've heard them. Why? Because it confirms what millions have whispered about online. The moon bump theory, once laughed off as conspiracy, now has an eyewitness. A credible one. This isn't just about a bump. It's about trust. It's about image. It's about the idea that even the most sacred roles in the royal family can be manufactured. And if this was manufactured, what else was? Arthur's breaking point. Why did Arthur wait so long to come forward? Because he saw what happened to people who spoke up. Staffers who were fired. Journalists blacklisted. Friends ghosted. Even family members who crossed a line found themselves exiled. Arthur feared he'd be cut off, discredited, painted as a bitter old man. But when he saw that even photographers were being ordered to delete images, to not publish specific angles, to stage the candid bump cradles, that was the moment something inside him shifted. He began keeping copies, making notes, whispering to other photographers when he could, because even for someone as seasoned as Arthur Edwards, something felt wrong. Audience question. Have you ever looked at a photograph and felt like it was hiding something? Like what it showed wasn't what really happened? Arthur did. Again and again. And now, Finally, he's speaking. Not in tabloids. Not for money. But for truth. The curiosity gap. So what exactly did Arthur see? What was in the photo they told him to delete? Who whispered to him backstage that Meghan was wearing something? And what moment during the Australia tour nearly made him walk away from the palace entirely? We'll answer all of that. Every piece. Every photo. Every contradiction. But not yet. Because before we show you the evidence, you need to understand just how deep this deception may have gone. How the palace operated to maintain an image. And how one photographer's silence may have helped protect a royal illusion until now. One day, Arthur arrived early for a shoot at Frogmore. No staff around. No press. Just him, his camera, and what he witnessed through a window. A moment so bizarre, so unexplainable, he never forgot it. And what he saw? Well, that changed everything. What kind of man keeps royal secrets for over 4 decades, and then finally decides to speak? And what exactly pushes someone that trusted, that embedded within the system, to finally break rank? Arthur Edwards wasn't just a guy with a camera. He was a shadow in every royal moment you've ever seen frozen in time. Weddings, funerals, balcony kisses, baby announcements, and heartbreaks. If a royal smiled, waved, or cried, there was a good chance Arthur was standing behind the lens capturing it. And yet, he never spoke. He never blinked. Until now. So why him? And why now? Let's go back to the beginning. The photographer the royals let in. Arthur Edwards was born in London in 1940. A quiet kid, raised by a single mother in the East End, he had no fancy connections. He didn't grow up with privilege or pomp. In fact, photography wasn't even his first calling. It was something he fell into. But what he lacked in status, he made up for in determination. By the late 1970s, Arthur had worked his way into the newsroom at The Sun. Back then, royal coverage wasn't the circus it is now. But Arthur saw something others didn't, the power of image. He knew the monarchy lived not just in castles, but in the eyes of the public. And if you could control the images, you could control the narrative. And that's how he became the royal photographer. Over time, Arthur built a relationship with the royals that very few ever would. He didn't ask questions. He didn't push boundaries. He stood where he was told, waited patiently, and delivered gold every time. And the royal family rewarded him with trust. He flew on the Queen's plane, ate behind the scenes during tours, was granted access to private grounds no journalist could ever dream of. He was there when Charles first introduced Diana. He was there when William and Harry were born. He was there when the Queen shed her first public tear. Arthur didn't just document royal history. He helped define how we remember it. So ask yourself this. If someone that close is now speaking up, just how deep does the rabbit hole go? The cost of access. Arthur knew the rules. Never overstep. Never print an unflattering shot. Never question the narrative. Those who did were cut off. No access meant no photos. No photos meant no paycheck. And for photographers, royal ones especially, you only stayed in the game if the royals wanted you there. So when Meghan Markle entered the scene, Arthur, like always, kept his opinions to himself. He shot her arrival with elegance, framed her like royalty, captured her in angles the public would love. But behind closed doors, he was watching and noticing. Meghan was different. Not just because she was American, or biracial, or an actress, all things the tabloids salivated over, but because she was obsessed with image in a way even the palace wasn't prepared for. The smile was just for the lens. Unlike Diana, who hated the camera but endured it. Unlike Kate, who eventually made peace with it. Meghan courted it. Every gesture seemed rehearsed. Every look calculated. She knew which side was her good side, when to hold the baby bump, when to give that warm gaze into Harry's eyes. Arthur noticed. He wasn't judging, not at first. He had spent his life working with public figures who knew the power of a good image. But then something strange happened. The bump that kept changing. It started subtly. At one engagement, Meghan's bump seemed unusually high, tight against her body. The next day, in a different dress, it appeared much lower and softer. That's not entirely abnormal during pregnancy, Arthur thought. Every woman carries differently. But it kept happening. And in photos he took just hours apart, the silhouette would shift again. He chalked it up to fabric, to lighting. But the shifts didn't make sense. So he did what he was trained to do. He looked closer. And what he saw was unnerving. Seams in odd places. folds where there shouldn't be folds, wrinkles where fabric was supposedly pulled tight. And most alarmingly, the bump itself seemed to collapse at one angle and protrude oddly at another. Still, he said nothing. Because that's what you did when you worked for the royals. The code of silence. There's an unspoken rule in royal photography. Protect the family image at all costs. The palace has final say over what gets published. If you leak something, you're blacklisted. One bad frame, one disloyal whisper, and you're out. Forever. Arthur knew this better than anyone. So he kept shooting. He played along. Until a photo nearly got him fired. The shot that wasn't meant to exist. During one engagement, Arthur took a low-angle shot of Meghan as she stepped out of a car. It wasn't a planned moment, just a candid grab. But what it showed stunned him. The bump folded. Not just shifted, not sagged. Folded. As in creased. Like a costume. Arthur stared at it for minutes in the back of his van. He zoomed in, again and again. There it was, an unmistakable line, right across the belly. He hadn't edited it. He hadn't added a shadow. This was raw, real, undeniable. But then, moments later, his phone buzzed. A Palisade. One he'd worked with for years. Don't run that image. No greeting. No explanation. Just a command. Arthur asked, innocently, which one? You know which one. And that's when it hit him. They were watching him as much as he was watching them. That photo? It never made the paper. Arthur pretended to delete it. But he didn't. He kept a copy. Just in case. And that was the beginning of the end. What happens when you know too much? Arthur wasn't a conspiracy theorist. He wasn't into tabloids or gossip. He lived his life behind the lens, documenting history. But this was different. Because for the first time, he felt like he was being used. Not just as a photographer, but as a tool in a greater illusion. And that's what made him uneasy. What if everything he had built, all the trust, all the access, was being leveraged to help pull off the greatest public deception in modern royal history? Was he complicit? Was he part of the lie? He didn't know yet. But he knew one thing. He had to start watching more carefully. And that's exactly what he did. From that moment on, every shoot became an investigation. Every image, a potential clue. Because Arthur wasn't just photographing a duchess anymore. He was documenting a performance. And behind every performance, there's a slip-up. You just have to catch it. Cliffhanger ending. And Arthur would catch it. He just didn't know yet that when he finally did, it wouldn't just cost him his peace of mind. It would almost cost him everything. Because what came next wasn't just another odd photo. It was the moment Meghan squatted in heels, 8 months pregnant, and the entire press pit stopped breathing. And Arthur? He dropped his camera. What happens when a royal photo is so unsettling, so impossible to explain? They demand it be erased from history? That's what happened with one image Arthur Edwards took. An image that, according to palace insiders, was never supposed to see the light of day. But Arthur didn't delete it. And what it shows might just change everything you think you know about Meghan Markle's pregnancy. Let's step into that moment. The event that was supposed to be a routine walkabout. It was a bright, breezy spring afternoon. Meghan Markle, visibly pregnant, arrived for a public engagement at a school in West London. The usual royal circus had gathered, children waving flags, press snapping endless frames, aides fussing over last-minute logistics. Arthur Edwards was there early, camera in hand, lens cleaned, position secured. This wasn't his first shoot that week, or that month, but something about this event felt different. Meghan was glowing, smiling, embracing kids, making eye contact with every camera. But it wasn't the smile that caught Arthur's attention. It was the stomach. The moment the angle betrayed the narrative. As Meghan leaned forward to greet a child, maybe a 6 or 7-year-old in the front row, Arthur instinctively dropped lower to capture the shot from beneath. Photographers live for these moments. Low angles give power, majesty, drama. And Arthur, ever the master, timed it perfectly. Click. The shutter snapped. 1 second. 1 frame. But when Arthur glanced at the digital preview on his camera, his breath caught in his throat. The bump, which had appeared tight and round just moments before, was now hanging. Not sagging. Hanging. Like fabric. Like it had shifted. And worse, it was creased. Yes, creased. A deep, sharp line across the side, where the dress had previously been smooth. Not a natural skin fold. Not a wrinkle from posture. It looked like a seam. And no matter how many times Arthur blinked, zoomed, adjusted the contrast, the image didn't change. The bump folded, but Meghan didn't. That was the terrifying part. Meghan herself hadn't bent, hadn't twisted. Her body position was upright, symmetrical. There was no reason for a belly, especially one supposedly 8 months along, to be folding. Unless Arthur didn't want to finish that thought, but the whisper of it was loud.